Hello, my name is Karen Gondoli, and I am the CEO of Leostream. Today, I want to lead you through a demonstration of the Leostream platform for remote desktop access. To get you grounded, let's start with a high-level network architecture. The Leostream platform consists of four key components. The brains of the operation is the Leostream connection broker. That is where you will define the access control rules and connect to the authentication methods that you want to use to ensure that only authorized users get access only to the resources that they should be allowed to connect to. Now, the broker is sold as downloadable software. You install this in your own data center, cloud, wherever you want it to be. It currently runs on Linux, and that's nice because then you don't have to invest in a Windows Server operating system to run your management plane. And it's very easy to scale and create hybrid environments with the broker. You simply install as many brokers as you need to manage your login storms, and you connect them all to an external database, which can be SQL or Postgres. Now, the broker, in order to implement all the automations that you will make in your access control rules, the broker communicates with the second component, which is the Leostream agent. The Leostream agent is installed on all of your hosted desktops, and these can be Windows, Linux, Mac. They can be desktop operating systems or even server operating systems if you want to do multi-user servers or publish remote applications. The Leostream agent sends information back to the connection broker about the user's session. It's not monitoring what the user is doing. It's looking at the remote session itself and sending events such as logins, disconnects, idle time notifications. And those are the events that you can use in the broker to automate, for example, logging out idle users, powering down machines in the clouds. It's what really gives IT power and simplifies their life by making all of these automated rules for controlling compute and power states and access. The third component is actually optional depending on your network architecture. That's the Leostream gateway. The gateway also runs on Linux, and it is the key for remote access. So if you want to remove any sort of need for a VPN, you can use the Leostream gateway to forward login traffic to the connection broker, and also ultimately to forward the desktop connection traffic from the user's client device to whichever machine you have permitted them to connect to. Now, again, if your user's client devices have network access directly to your broker and your desktop, you don't need the gateway. Works fine without it. But you can still use the gateway if you want in those scenarios because it does also come with a built-in HTML5 viewer, which supports RDP, VNC, and SSH. So you still get that cross operating system connection ability. The fourth and final component is essentially where the user is, what the client device that they're using to log into your environment and ultimately connect to their desktops. Users can use a number of different types of client devices to log into a Leostream environment. We do provide a software client called Leostream Connect, and it is what's used in step one for the login. It would then launch the display protocol software client associated with the desktop connection type that you've determined the user should use. If you don't want to use our Leostream Connect client, if you are using HP Anywhere PCORP connections, any HP Anywhere client supports Leostream logins. That can be Zero clients, the trusted Zero clients, software clients, what have you. And also, Leostream has a web client that you can use to log in. So that's great for BYOD initiatives, and particularly if you want to use the HTML5 viewer that's in the gateway, or one of the HTML5 viewers that's provided by any of the display protocols that we support. So that is the architecture. Now let's look at the platform itself. So let's start by logging in as an end user. So this is the Leostream web client. This is completely customizable via CSS and HTML. You have a message board here. You can log in using username, password. We do support a number of other types of authentication. But here when the user logs in, what they see is only the resources that you have given them permission to access. And now, depending on the rules you set up. They might have the ability to reboot machines, start stopped machines. For certain display protocols, they might be able to configure how the display protocol is launched. They also might be able to collaborate with other users based on the display protocol. They can, everybody loves this, switch into dark mode if they want, switch the views around from tiles to lists. And again, this is customizable via CSS and HTML as well. Ultimately, what the user really wants to do is connect to their machine, so they just hit the launch button, and that will launch the connection that you've decided they should use. In this case, it's launching a TGX connection. I'm just going to move that off the screen and then show you how you make this magic happen in the administrator web interface. This now is the same web interface, but now I'm going to log in as an administrator. So when I sign in as an admin, oops, where I get dropped is on the Leostream dashboard. This is going to be great once you have your system up and running. It gives you a snapshot of how many users are connected, logged in. You can see desktops, assignments, and power states. Really gives you a snapshot of what's going on in your environment. This is my demo environment, so it's just me logging in, not much going on. What I always tell somebody when they start using the Leostream Connection Broker is you treat this left side menu bar as a wizard, and you start in setup and you work your way down. So if we look at authentication servers, as I mentioned, Leostream does support a wide range of authentication methods. Here, if you want to use Active Directory authentication, I can add in an AD server, just enter in the domain, information that we need to log in and search for users and ultimately authenticate them. And you can have as many AD servers as you need. So if you do have different domains in your environment, those can all be managed from within this one portal. Now, if you're moving towards a passwordless solution, then maybe what you want to do is use your corporate identity provider, such as Okta or Entra ID. And then what you'll do is users would log in through that identity provider, and using a SAML assertion, they are authorized into your Leostream environment. If you're using username password with Active Directory, you still do have MFA options. So you can come to MFA providers and you'll notice that we support native Duo authentication, and that works with the Leostream web client. Or if you're using Leostream Connect or an HP Anywhere client, you can essentially use any provider that supports the Radius protocol. So here I've used Okta. Duo also can use Radius. You have many options there as well. The final section in this, well, not second to last section, let's say, in the setup that you'll want to look at is the centers. Centers in Leostream are any third-party hosting provider that Leostream integrates with using their native APIs. And by doing that, you can obviously inventory what you have in there. You can provision new virtual machines or cloud-hosted machines. You can power control the machines. It gives you a lot of control over all of the environments that you have, all from a single platform here. So if I look at all the different center types that Leostream supports, if you're managing physical workstations and they're joined to an Active Directory domain, you can inventory them from that. You'll notice we support 3 major cloud vendors, AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. For AWS, that's both EC2 as well as the Amazon Workspaces Core Managed Instances, which are great options if you need to do a BYOL for Windows 11 into EC2. KubeVirt is how we integrate with Red Hat OpenShift. It's essentially a container platform, but using the full virtualization on that container platform. So any container platform that supports KubeVirt, we can integrate with as well. And then you'll notice there's also a number of hyperconverged infrastructures in here. You have Nutanix, Scale Computing, Verge.io. I mentioned you can do multi-user servers, either as full desktops or as applications. That works great as well. And obviously virtualization with VMware and OpenStack if you're building some sort of cloud based on OpenStack, or if you're working with some sort of service provider who has a cloud based on OpenStack, such as Virtuoso, that works great as well. Now, when you create one or more, however many you need, centers in Leostream, as soon as you create that, Leostream uses the APIs to reach out to that center and inventory what you have in there. Your inventories show up down here in the Resources Center section. All of your desktops or multi-user sessions show up on the desktops page. And this is a great page when you get into kind of day 2 operations, because here is where you're going to see what users are assigned to different machines. I can look at the Leostream agent status and debug if there's a problem. I can see what display protocols are supported. That information comes from the Leostream agent. Anytime you see a list like this in Leostream, you can actually come in and customize the information that's shown there. Leostream collects a lot of information about your desktops and your users and their clients, and you have the ability to tailor each of these views to see exactly what you need. And then you can export them if you need to, so you can create reports or run statistics on them. Now, keep in mind, you host this in your own environment, so there's a lot of data in here, but it is always under your control. So going back into setup, the last thing I'll point out is the gateways page. The gateways and the broker are both very easy to install with a single command. They're just RPM files that you'll install on your Rocky, RHEL, or Alma Linux machines. And then to hook your gateways up to the broker, you simply go to the Gateways tab and then enter in a name, whatever you want it to be, and the IP address that is accessible from the user's client. If you want, you can optionally add a second private IP that the broker can use internally. Now, as I mentioned, the gateway does have a built-in HTML5 viewer. It also can do what we call port forwarded connections for display protocols. And this essentially means that the gateway, based on instructions from the broker, is forwarding traffic from a particular remote client through its firewall, through the gateway's firewall, to a particular desktop based on your access control rules. And how that forwarding is done, how that firewall rule is set up, is governed by the settings that you have here. So in the setup section, we've hooked up to essentially all the external systems that are part of your Leostream environment. So your authentication servers, your centers, your gateways. And then in the configuration section, we start building up the access control rules that you want to implement. And we start by looking at pools. Now, pooling in Leostream is very, very flexible, and it solves a few problems. For one, you can consider pooling as an organizational tool. If you have different administrators who need to administer subsets of desktops, you can create pools of those, and then using roles, you can limit the admin's access to only seeing the desktops in those pools, and maybe allowing them to reboot them or unassign users. Pools also control provisioning. So if I look, for example, at this pool, you'll see the pool definition defines what's in the pool, and this is a dynamic definition. So as new machines are discovered, they will automatically get sorted into the appropriate pools. And then down at the bottom is where I can enable provisioning. So this allows you to pre-populate pools of desktops based on a master image. It allows you to model non-persistent workflows, which in Leostream means we delete a machine when the user is done and re-provision it from your golden image. And the way you provision, well, you set some limits. It can be either static or based on day and time. And then you use the provisioning parameters to tell the connection broker how to provision the machine. And what these parameters look like will depend on the center type that you're provisioning into. For the scale computing platform, I simply select the master template. If I come in and look at an Amazon pool, I want to provision into AWS, you'll notice the provisioning parameters change. So pools help you manage capacity. Pools are obviously organizational for your admins. And then ultimately, you're going to connect users to desktops out of particular pools. Now, they're not entitled on the pool themselves. You're going to entitle users to pools down here later in policies. But do keep in mind that when you're organizing your pools, you want to do so in a way that ultimately is how you'll map these pools to users. So perhaps it's based on the applications that are installed. Maybe it's based on CPU or GPU. You have many ways to configure those pools appropriately. After you do that, then what you need to do is decide how you want to manage the user's session with respect to those pools. And that's done in what we call plans. So if I start at the top, we look at protocol plans. This determines how the connection broker is going to connect the user to their desktop. Leostream supports a wide range of display protocols. Now you'll see this form is broken into sections. This is based on the client type. So are they using Leostream Connect? Are they coming from a web browser? This is for the Dell Wise ThinOS clients and obviously PC over IP clients. In each section, you can indicate which protocol has priority, and then you can configure how that protocol is launched. In some cases, protocols are launched based on configuration files. Sometimes there's command line parameters. And where appropriate, you can indicate if that protocol needs to go through a gateway or not. Power control and release plans, then, here's where you start to see the Leostream agent come into play. So if I look, for example, at this plan, you see that it's broken into these sections. Did the user disconnect? Have they logged out? Did they go idle? These are the events that are coming from the Leostream agent. And in a power control plan, well, you can control power state. So perhaps when the user disconnects, I want to shut down. Maybe I don't want to shut down on disconnect. I want to shut down on logout. That sounds a little safer. But you have control over that. Release plans become more interesting. In a release plan, you will set how long a user has access to a machine after they have connected to it. So as an example, here you see again, the plan is broken into sections: disconnect, log out, idle time, what have you. Now the thing about these different events is they can trigger one another. So you can get pretty interesting with how you manage these sessions. So let's say here, if a user disconnects, well, I really want to wait. I'm going to give them a half hour to reconnect to that machine. And if they don't reconnect in a half hour, I'm going to log them out. Well, that will trigger this part of the plan, which will log them out immediately, which means release to the pool immediately. And that release is another event, which triggers the section down here. And here's where, if I wanted to model that non-persistent workflow, I could delete the machine if I wanted to, which again would spin up a brand new one for the user. You'll notice I can also do this based on idle time. So here I'm saying if they're idle for 30 minutes, go ahead and log them out, which again will trigger this part of the plan, and you get the idea from there. Now, once you have your pools and your plans, you want to bring them all together in what we call policies. So these policies, that's what determined what my end user was offered when I first logged in. And I happen to be offered this policy. Now in the policy, there's some general settings, but the real exciting part happens here in pool assignments. Here is where you can indicate which, and it can be one, it can be many, pools users have access to. And then inside those pools, how many machines they should get. Maybe it's one, maybe you want to offer them all the machines and they can pick. You get to decide. And then a lot of these other options help the broker determine what's the best machine in that pool to offer. And then also helps you control what are some of the permissions users have. For example, can they shut down their own machines? Are they allowed to collaborate with other users? And then ultimately here you assign the plans to that pool. Now to be assigned to a policy, that's done here in the assignments. Now if I look at this page, you'll notice there's 2 rows here. Those rows mimic what I set up for my authentication servers. Ultimately, the policies are assigned to users based on the user's attribute. So for AD, for Active Directory, by default, that's their group membership. And so the way this Leostream equation reads, it says based on who the user is, here by default group, but you can change that, and where they log in from. A location in Leostream is essentially a group of clients. And so you can use this to create client locations based on internal and external users. Maybe it's based on the client device type. So here I have a location of PC over IP, so I can offer them a different policy. Perhaps it's based on the floor, so you can attach different printers. You can decide. But the key is you can change what the user is offered based not only on who they are, but where they come in from. That combination then determines if they need to go through an MFA provider in the case of an AD user. And then, based on all that being true, you get a role and a policy. The policy, as you saw, determines which pools the user has access to and how the broker is going to connect and control that section. The role has a couple functions. One as I mentioned earlier, is to provide role-based access to administrators of this interface. Each page, and in some pages, particular functionality on the page has a role permission that you can toggle to view only, full permission. You can really tailor access. For end users, there's a handful of role options that correspond to, again, allowing users to reboot machines or do collaboration. Now, the way Leostream evaluates this is when the user logs in, obviously we authenticate them, and if their authentication passes, in the authentication server that did the authentication, the broker starts stepping through the rules and it assigns the user to the first row that the user satisfies, and then it stops looking at the rest of the rows. So the key is the user gets a single policy, and that's why the policy needs to offer multiple pools. Now, before users even start logging in, you can come to the users page in resources and actually test it out. So here, if I look at my test login results, I'll see the parameters up at the top. I'll see that it found me in an authentication server, and then I can see it stepping through the rules to find the one that I've matched. The rest of the display then steps through the policy logic. So you can see the policy settings and then see which machine would be offered from that policy, how it would be offered, how it would be connected. And this way you can look and make sure that you've got all the policy and plans pools set up correctly so that when the users do start logging in, they can be productive from the get-go. So as an example, here I notice that I have a pool that has machines in it, but none are in service. And so now I can go back and look at, okay, why are these machines not in service? Is the Leostream agent not installed? Are they powered off, but I'm not offering powered off desktops? And again, gives you that debugging tool before users start logging in. Once they do start logging in, the system log page gives you a great place for more day 2 operational tools. It's going to show you the running tally of everything that's going on in your system. So I can see users logging in, I can see when they launch connections to machines, and I have this all over time, so I always have a record of what's going on in my system. So with that, I'm going to stop this demonstration and encourage you to contact us at info.leostream.com if you want to learn more. There's obviously a lot of other settings I didn't cover, or if you want to give it a try. We offer free demos and free 30-day trials. Thank you very much.